A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Well, it is a beautiful Monday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Oh, what a morning it's going to be. Well, not just a morning, a day, perhaps a week, because the Joint Health Sector Union, JOHESU, say they are embarking on an indefinite strike. So they've been having discussions with the Minister of Labour. They've gone back and forth about some of those agreements or what it is that they wanted. But it just turns out that they've hit a brick wall. Don't forget that they're just coming off that negotiation with the National Association of Resident Doctors. And the Minister of State for Health did tell us on the program that they had paid some amount of money to health workers. Thereafter, they had another meeting, and then they said some other funds were released to them. But as it is today, guys, I don't know. It's another day, another strike.
Honestly, another week, another strike. We just came off a resident doctor strike just last week. It was resolved eventually. Usually they suspend those strikes. You never hear them, calling off or ending the strike. Is just most times suspension. And now we're in the strike of JOHESU. By the way, JOHESU cuts across a lot of institutions, medical institutions. So this is a major one. Already a lot of patients, if you look through the headlines, you see patients and what have you groaning as a result of this strike action. The Ministry of Labour has put out its own position saying that this is wrong, this is not right to do that at this time, especially because they were at that negotiation just last week. And what struck me was the fact that the head of JOHESU said they don't mind going to jail. He actually said that. They don't mind going to jail. And it hit me that as much as we would like to say, okay, this party may be wrong, this party may be right, the truth is there are issues that need to be resolved in Nigeria's health sector. Nobody should even try to look away from that. That is the fact. And we need to sit down and resolve this. Whether or not this is a right move to make, of course, the jury's out there.
Those issues you raised date back decades. I'm sorry, guys, it seems I'm always going back in time about these issues. But I remember clearly that it was during the Babangida government that we were talking about brain drain among doctors in Nigeria.
But that would never stop, really.
Now, the point that I'm making there is these doctors go out of Nigeria, make a big name for themselves. We continue to reference them. Many of us travel out of Nigeria to go to those doctors, Nigerian doctors outside Nigeria, get medical help and come back home and still watch the same decay going on. I don't know, when this is going to
those who should have, maybe the leaders.
The leaders who should. Exactly my point. We go to Dubai, we go to India, we go to all these countries. We know what is going on. We know what can be done. We know what should be done, and we refuse to do it. There is no justification for anyone going on strike, but the laborer is worth his wages.
So
sorry, just one moment. It also is a little disturbing. Well, sometimes when some might say, "Hey, why is it that they only call for a strike when it has to do with their money?" Well, that's another issue. But one of the things that JOHESU is raising is infrastructure in the health sector. NMA raises that anytime they want to go on strike. NARD raises that when they want to go on strike. Is it that we don't know what we need to do?
Huge questions, and I'm sure the labor unions will think, well, we have a justification for going on this strike. It is our right. We can go on an industrial action as at when we deem necessary, especially if those needs are not met.
Forgive me, Kayode. What disturbs me about this is the fact that we have to wait for this to happen. You already pointed it out, Chamberlain. We raised this with the minister last week, Minister of State for Health last week, that why does this have to happen? He said that they're already in consultation with them. Are we communicating with them to the point that they can buy whatever it is that we're saying and agree that, okay, you guys are right?
So I wonder as well, we make of those images that we saw throughout last week or when they were in meetings with NARD. There were images of them in meetings with the federal government. So they had all of those things, and so that some of how those things turned out. But all right, I guess we'll come to some of those issues later. But let's move on and take a look at how the dailies are reflecting what we've got today. We'll start with New Telegraph today. Presidency, PDP clash. over OBJ's failed state remark. Guys, gotta be sharp at this one. That's what New Telegraph reads. FG, Obasanjo promoting disunity, religious, ethnic agenda. PDP to Buhari, save Nigeria from imminent collapse. APC, ex-president unfit to chart way forward. So, lots of back and forth again today. There you go. And look at what we spoke about just now. Health workers withdraw services nationwide. FG declares JOHESU strike illegal, ill-timed. So, wow. Well, a bit of health news could help, you know. More than one drink daily can raise blood pressure, diabetes risks.
More than one drink?
That's right.
What kind of drink? Water drink?
It's on page 25, if you want to know. That's why they put it there.
That's there.
So people can check it out. And that's, I think it's a good one now because they're able to elicit the right kind of response.
Rouse your interest.
You know when you do
curiosity.
adverts in school,
Of course.
when they teach you how to write some of those copy and say, it must move you to certain action. And I think it did in this particular one. So, nice one, New Telegraph. You did something. So, okay, well, other than Forex squeeze hits manufacturing sector. So, that's the Telegraph today.
Take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper. Big story. Only dialogue can solve Nigeria's challenges. Who say that? Onoyekan, Jega, Agua, Ugaje, others to Buhari.
Maybe this dates back to decades too. We're talking about dialogue.
Absolutely. Dialogue is one term that has always come up. And you wonder how much of it we actually do. You see, the writers advised Council of State Governors Forum to lead discourse, urged President to sack service chiefs. Issues can be resolved at National Assembly. That's coming from the presidency. Sort of saying, well, you know, let's take things easy. There are ways to go about this. But clearly, divergent opinions.
Same National Assembly.
Issues can be resolved at the National Assembly. Well, has the issues ever been raised, much less discussed?
Well, it fell through.
But we have other papers. You see the items, the issues that come up, the votes, and you know, the oversight functions, the probes.
So how come we're still talking about restructuring?
Big question right there, honestly.
Yeah, it means different things to different people. Don't forget that.
So we need to actually have a dialogue to understand what restructuring should look like.
What happened to the dialogue of 2014?
And the other ones, right?
And the other ones.
Well, page 5 of a Daily Trust.
We'll find out soon.
This morning. And there's a picture, really, on the front page that shows an abandoned quarry site at Crush Rock, Mpape, Abuja, yesterday. And you see a lot of people there. It almost looks like a tourist center, but I don't see people with mats. Oh, yeah, there are people with mats. Really, you know what? Pick up a copy of a Daily Trust to understand what that picture is about. And you see this one, Obasanjo is Nigeria's divider-in-chief. It's coming from the presidency. It's on page 4. I recall some years ago when the president said he was hesitant to reply former President Obasanjo. But now those replies come in as fast as they can. More details on page 4. Gunmen abduct 17 family members in Kaduna. It's on page 6. And that story about health workers, of course, makes its way to page 62. Some things for you, really. On the back page of the Daily Trust, Ogun Oyo athletes dominate at cycling festival. Did you know that was a thing in Nigeria? Well, page 63 will give you more details in the Daily Trust.
Cycling is great. You should try it.
The Nigerian Tribune is next and still talking about the same issues as I think the New Telegraph. Presidency, APC descend on Obasanjo Atiku. Find that story on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Obasanjo is a low-level commander-in-chief. That's coming from the presidency. Atiku can't sermonize on economy, says APC. Listen to voice of reason. PDP cautions Buhari. That story, you'll find the details on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Right above the nameplate, APC, again, PDP, APC trade words over plans to rig Edo poll. APC planning to scuttle poll with lawsuit, PDP alleges. We have no interest in your rigging plans, says APC. Ganduje So mobilize Arewa community. Lagos Police Command deploys 1,000 officers in Edo. Interesting. That's on page 27.
All eyes on Edo right now.
All eyes on Edo, and that's really interesting.
You must have caught the debate yesterday. Quite an
Man,
interesting
and that's very, really interesting. I mean, some people are, well, of course, depends on which side of the divide you fall on. Now, I find this a little disturbing. Flood sweeps away 2 children in Lagos, 3 killed in Kaduna. That story is on page 25. It hadn't rained in Lagos in a very long time, and then it rained and it poured really seriously, and then this. And I also caught the news, yesterday at the news at 10, where there were a list of 4 states where flooding, dealt really heavily. Of course, Kaduna was there, Imo, and Delta, and Niger State as well. So it's coming down to what the DG of NISA had been telling us, and we should really give attention to it.
Absolutely. And it's really sad, honestly, that story coming in from Lagos. 2 children swept away. It's really sad.
Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
We'll take a look at Vanguard newspaper next. Will fight hike in price of fuel, electricity tariff, Labour insists. We're determined to fight fuel price hike, electricity tariff increase, organized Labour. FG meets Labour leaders, CSOs tomorrow. NLC leaders meet Wednesday. JAF begins nationwide mass protest Wednesday.
Did you hear about the breads, the bakers? Apparently a lot of people have been finding it hard to get bread in Lagos, so parts of Lagos, that is.
Yeah, and that might just be for a while if, certain things are not done, because already from the riders here, you can see it looks as if it's going to be a big Wednesday this week. FG insensitive to suffering of Nigerians, says Pandef, demands building of refineries in Nigeria. You thought that those were some of the conditions given, or that they expected to have happened before this, but they also put out reasons why some of these things are going on. Practicing fees. I'll go again. Practicing fees seal. NBA asks lawyers to ignore Malami's order. I don't know if you caught some of those. They've already been going on themselves now, saying no, you don't have rights, unilaterally to change or take away that seal, which is the most, of course, one of the crucial items of what binds lawyers and gives the NBA certain things, maybe some oomph, if you will. But now they say this is threatened. Add to that, remember that Spencer group that said they're forming a new NBA?
Oh yeah.
You never know.
I mean, you wonder.
And then, how could I miss the Mr. and Mrs. today? Well, it's a Monday, so let me give it to you. Well, Mrs. telling Mr., I don't understand you any longer. What do you mean by this soup has been assaulted? That's Mrs., because Mr. just, taking some soup and maybe some, how we call it here, swallow. Okay. But Mr. says, retorts a bit and says, it's full of salt. I don't know how you can say that.
Oh, right. I get it now. I get it.
Careful what you say when you're at that table.
Yeah.
Take a look at what's on the back page. More worries for Salah. I beg your pardon. I'll go again. More worries for Liverpool. Salah wants Barca transfer. Okay, that's more like it now, isn't it? So who knows? And then
no, it's okay. I don't think that's happening.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We'll see. And then all eyes on Havertz. Werner. That's Chelsea battle of Brighton. Many will be watching. Whoa, how is this Chelsea team going to go? Will they just go the way Dominic Thiem bounced back from the brink yesterday, US Open? You never can tell. That's Vanguard.
You know that joke about their kit and that number and the kit? But you know what? Let's show you what's on the front page of a leadership newspaper this morning. And this one is serious. Patients groan as strike crowns activities in hospitals. Yeah. Industrial action illegal. FG, the federal government, will resume work if our demands are met. Health workers, of course, that's why they went on that strike in the first place, because they have the demands and they want those demands met. If you just want to understand the scale, find more details on page 4. And see this one. President slashes villa budget to 10 billion naira. You wonder what it was before, and now 10 billion naira. What that covers, yeah, 10 billion naira. And orders MDAs to conclude bilateral meetings on 2021 budget. Yeah, you understand the speed, the fact that we have reverted to the general December cycle. So we have to prepare our budgets, way on time now. It's on page 7. And that responds to former president. Your divider-in-chief presidency hits back at Obasanjo. A superintendent over national rot, APC. PMB prevented Nigeria from becoming a failed state. Lai Mohammed. Starts on front page, continues on page 4. And you see that NNPC to begin mass deployment of gas facilities in filling stations. Page 25. What type of gas? Well,
the one you were looking for your car?
Maybe not, but 25. Okay. Page 25 of Leadership newspaper this morning. There are a couple of other stories. Let's leave it there.
The Daily Times newspaper is looking at it differently this morning. Buhari influenced by Jonathan's style on Chief of Staff, others. What that is about, you may want to check the inside pages. Stories on page 2, actually. And this picture is of traffic caused by indiscriminate display of wares by traders on the Abuja-Kaduna Highway in Niger State. Now, pension workers scared of retirement as bottlenecks choke pensions. That story is on page 4. Governorship election. Lagos Police Command deploys 1,000 officers for Edo governorship election. Find that on page 4 as well. And stock market, NSE's equities depreciate by 0.05% amid profit taking in banking shares. Above the nameplate is the editorial, the Water Resources Bill. You've been wondering what it's about? Find it right there on the front page of the Daily Times.
We'll take a look at the Guardian next. Fiscal headwinds could scuttle economic recovery. CBN report. Naira buckles under failing reserves, speculative trading, risk aversion. And you thought that they said at the time that, it was going to bounce back, given the CBN's intervention, going to sell a certain amount of dollars to the market. And now you have this one. So you just, okay, well, who knows? It's right here for you to see. 200% fare hike. COVID-19 protocols put air travel in disarray. Oh dear. Travelers stuck in UK over tests. I understand that it's not just in UK. You have some travelers who are equally stuck in, particularly if you're making transit flights to some countries. I think Turkey got complaints over the weekend that some Nigerians are equally stranded there. They can't leave, the premises of, the checks inside the airport. The embassies can't access them as of yet. Who knows? The other writer here says, FG halts pre-boarding payment for tests to fix 40 platform. Airlines urge government to harmonize safety guidelines. So if you're going to be traveling, you need to really make a lot of inquiries so you don't get yourself stuck midway if you're in transit. And they say if you don't have that country's visa, you just might have a lot more problems. That's the Guardian today.
I mean, that's the new normal of traveling, right?
Yep.
News Direct, big story. Presidency attacks Obasanjo, describes him as Nigeria's divider-in-chief. Says Buhari prevented Nigeria from becoming a failed state. I mean, that's something you find across front pages this morning. And you see IPIS department not involved in university appointment promotions, AGF. Yes, there's still a lot of talk about IPIS. And you see NCC emergency communication centers provide, or rather process, 1,500 COVID-19 related calls. Dambata, you recall, I think that was launched a few months ago, and apparently there's been a lot of action on that one. It's on page 22. And NERC seeks same regulatory power as CBN, NCC. This says a lot, by the way. If NERC is saying we need to be much more powerful, in quote, then it probably means they're not as powerful as they ought to be. So how much effect, how much weight can they pull in that sector? So if they're saying we want to be as, in quote, powerful as the CBN, the NCC, then maybe that's worth looking into.
And perhaps you also want to, first of all, assess how influential the power it has been, and how much of that has...
Especially in the power sector.
Especially in the power sector.
You need to be powerful enough in the power sector to ensure that things go smooth. A couple of other stories on the front page, but that's a news direct for you this morning.
Okay, so there you go. That ends a look at some of the dailies as well today. But to JOHESU now, let's get a word from the President of JOHESU, Joint Health Sector Union, Josiah Bubelemoye, joins us via Skype, Zoom. Okay, well, he's ready for us today anyway. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. So tell us then,
good morning, Kimberly.
Okay, so as
widely to Nigerians.
Thank you. As widely reported, is JOHESU on strike today?
Affirmatively, yes.
Oh, okay. But we thought that you were having discussions with the Ministry of Labor, I think the minister and some other persons there, and then they were talking about how you needed to give them more time. What happened?
Well, actually, they called for that discussion, but remember, we gave a 15 days notice. A 15 days notice that was called only just on Thursday when they know that the strike, the notice would be expiring by Sunday, midnight. And they waited until Thursday so they can just call us whatever name they want to call. And when we went into the discussions, rather than coming with open heart or open mind, they decided to start with intimidation. And they threatened us. And at the end of the day, with that threat, they followed up with insincerity, gross insincerity and dishonesty on the part of discussions. And so we took it back as we agreed that we are going to take back whatever we have discussed to our NEC. And the expanded NEC reviewed everything and found that there was nothing tangible. And as I speak to you now, even when they agreed that they are going to correct the COVID-19 allowances, COVID-19 allowances payment is on now, and I'm getting the reports that they're still paying the faulty 10% to our members, whom the agreement said should be paid 50%. Paragraph 1A of that agreement was explicit. Whoever was earning 5,000, replace that 5,000 with 50% of COVID allowance. And Chamberlain, see, in their own report, they'll be talking about yield timed and all that. Let Nigerians know through your channel and other channels that JOHESU has been peaceful for 2 years. We waited for them to solve all these problems and they refused. Even court judgment, IC judgment, Coastal Court judgment, that said they should implement in 4 weeks. This judgment was passed last March 2019, and we waited patiently, and they decided that our patience is foolishness, our patriotism is stupidity, and that we do not end their in any way. So JOHESU members have decided that even if it's going to be their death, they will rather be off again, because the caregiver must be alive to also give his care. And again, when there is gross bias exhibited, others have gone on strike during the climax of COVID in this country. They never said they have apprehended any strike. They discussed, and then they gave 6/8. Some 6/8. We reduced our own demands from over 15 to 5. And we said, okay, just give 3 now and let's see. And they're still playing games with it. 1st July, we agreed with them to correct this COVID-19 allowances. They refused to correct that. Then our consolidated salary adjustment, which they entered agreement 2017 to be implemented in 5 weeks. And today is 3 years now. Have they done it? No. The salaries, we tell salaries, they agree. So we tell salaries that they invited our members. They invited our members to join them in fighting corruption. We blew genuine whistle. They punished our members for blowing whistles. Genuine whistles, of course, EFCC confirmed all that we reported.
Okay. The Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Labor, first of all, it's quite shocking to hear you say that you were threatened, and I'm just wondering in what context did the government threaten JOHESU? And specifically, the Ministry of Labor recently, in response to the strike action, said that, well, they think that it's unfair for you to go on strike. In fact, that's why they use the term illegal and ill-termed, when matters are before a conciliator and under conciliation. So in the context of that response, and also because you have alleged that you were threatened, how do you respond?
Well, conciliation, if conciliation fails, what next? If conciliation comes with dishonesty, what next? If a conciliator is biased, what next? So we are given 15 days ultimatum, and the books that they are referring to, the legal books they are referring to, says for those in essential services that you must give 15 days before you withdraw services. And that is exactly what we have done. And within the 15 days, they had a lot of hours. 15 days is not just 24 hours to really discuss this and then solve the problem and save Nigerians. But because they know they have a red card, as they used to boast, that they will impose no work, no pay. They threatened us with no work, no pay. They threatened with court orders and all that. And we are waiting for that. We are waiting for that. And that's why I responded that day to the minister that JOHESU leaders are ready to be in prison if they will violate the same laws, and then they want to use the same laws. I think the courts are not stupid.
Now, specifically, the government has, well, for the government, they think that this matter is still under conciliation. They think that there's still some form of dialogue open, so they were shocked to hear that JOHESU would go on strike. But it's usually kind of tricky. For some people, they think JOHESU is going on strike because of hazard allowances alone. What are the issues here that you want resolved?
Oh, some of the things we went on strike in 2018 were structural decay, the management of the system, to make the system better for Nigerians. And they punished us for that. They punished us for that. So it's not just because of our allowances. But when it comes to talk about the allowances, we are in a family. We are in a family. We make 95% of the family. And where you will give everything to those who make 5%. And like I told you, people went on when COVID was ravaging. And they invited, they solved. They provided 6 demands out of 8. And so we being on strike does not mean that they will not still call us for, because they called others, so they should also, anytime they call us for dialogue, we are ready. But the dialogue must be serious dialogue. It must be a serious dialogue. When they show that seriousness, also go with them.
Okay. Now, you have suspended strike before and have resumed on that strike. What are the conditions? I mean, even if not 100%, what are the conditions under which JOHESU would be willing to go back to work? You mentioned COVID-19, and that's something a number of people are worried about, that what's going to happen to the COVID-19 and other, critically ill patients. To what extent is this strike, and what are the conditions that would make JOHESU go back to work?
Thank you. We sympathize with Nigerian patients, but they also should bear with us that we have been patient for 2 years. 2 years. Most of these things we're talking about, apart from COVID-19 issues, just which came this year. But if within the system, now they said they released money. They released the money still in the old amount, meaning that they are not ready to correct what we asked them, what they agreed to correct. So for us, 3 things. The expanded NEC has empowered us. 3 things must be done. Then we can consider a suspension within the 7 days warning strike. Now, 1, they must correct the COVID-19 payments to everybody, because what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Then 2, they must also ensure that we tell salaries to our members, some of which we protested the ills of the health system, the decay in the health system, and they punish us for that. And right today, as we speak, COVID-19 has exposed it to everybody that we were right. Now, if everybody, Nigerians and everybody have seen that our cries, we are right in our cries, then we should not be punished. We should be rather rewarded. As I speak to you, and that no work, no pay, it has been selectively used on only JOHESU members. So many other sectors have been on strike. They never implemented it. And we have asked them on the table the other day on Thursday, if that law prescribed that it is meant for only JOHESU members, even within the health industry.
Okay, all right. So
they have discretionary powers.
In other words, I think what you're saying is that they attended to the doctors, but they should attend to JOHESU as well. That's your point, isn't it?
Very, very right.
All right. Okay, then we do thank you, and we hope that all of this will be resolved in the interest of the country. Thank you for talking to us today, Mr. JOHESU President of JOHESU, joining us from Abuja, actually. We're back in a moment. Join us again.
The Northern Elders Forum recommends the alternative of leaders of thought, elders, groups, and professional organizations and representatives of the government to freely discuss every element of our coexistence as a country under principles of voluntarism, genuine representation, mutual respect, and integrity of the process. A Nigerian People's Conference on Review of the Constitution will benefit from past work in this direction, in addition to contemporary challenges which the country needs to address in a context that allows free and productive engagements without predetermined ends. The outcome of this conference should be submitted to the two arms of government, which should provide for a referendum in the Constitution so that Nigerians can directly decide on how they want their nation to be structured and function. The way to go is not to go through this omnibus, vague initiative about amending the Constitution. It should be focused. It should be directed at these new realities. It should address the issue of security, for instance. It should address the issue of poverty. It should address the issue of the crumbling economy of the country. It should address uncertainties about the future of the country. That's what the National Assembly should do. What they called for is memoranda to amend the Constitution, the same thing that has been done since 1999. So if they're concerned about new realities, they are certainly not going to address those new realities by the process that they want to put in place. This is just the same old thing that is being repeated.
Okay, welcome back. So a lot happened over the weekend. As you may have seen in the dailies, there's a lot of back and forth concerning the state of the nation. And then this planned amendment of the Constitution. How is it going to address some of these concerns that different ethnic nationalities, different groups are raising? So we'll hear from some of them, at least for today. And then as we progress in the course of the week, we'll get to hear from the others as well. So we do have Bega Adejumo, who is of the Yoruba Summit Group. He signed that press release as well. He will be joining us this morning. Then, well, do we go ahead and start with him right away then? Okay. Well, he signed the press release. So, Mr. Adejumo, yes, the press release indicated that the YSG was not happy with some of these planned amendments, and then you wanted other things addressed. So tell us, why is it that, because they say, look, once that amendment is done, it will address some of the issues that YSG is raising. Talk to us about that.
Good morning. Good morning to you guys.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Yes, it's a very simple matter when it comes to matters of how to live together. The Constitution should provide such an embodiment of agreements upon which people will be able to say we have a workable solution to our problems. But this constitution, of course, is not the people's constitution. We know how it was unilaterally slammed on the country by the military in 1999, and it does not in any way reflect the yearnings of the various ethnic groups that presently constitute Nigeria. But if I should just go back a little, what we're trying to say is simple. We have a myriad of problems plaguing this country right now, from economic development, which is stagnant, to serious insecurity, even food insecurity. We have people questioning even the sense of belonging to this country. We have the terrorist index group saying that Nigeria is the third most terrorized country in the world. I even saw another one from them that said we are now second. We have the U.S. Peace Fund that has categorized Nigeria as the 14th failed state or failing state in the world. We have all of these things which will bring us to the table. In 1946, the British gave us a constitution that didn't work, that couldn't have worked. The Yoruba, Chief Obafemi Awolowo actually started the struggle from there. And the Igbo, the boycottables people, and every other ethnic group, even the Arewa, said this is not going to work. So what happened then was a series of constitutional conferences. Remember the 1953 Constitutional Conference, for example. And everything led to the 54 Constitution, which was truly federal, and finally the 1963 Constitution. Since then, we have not actually had the Constitution by the people. Is that that we had a 79 Constitution that was tinkered by the military, and the military still had a constitutional review panel? The people could not have spoken, and then some people would simply come and say they want to review it. So what we are saying is this. We want to have our people's constitution. We want to have a document that reflects how we want to live. We don't want to have a unitary system that camouflages like a federal system. We want to have control over our own resources. We want to have it like every other federal state in the world. We'll be able to say this is what federalism is. This is not federalism, and it's not working. It's simply very straightforward thing. It is not working.
Resource control issues making the rounds again. We'll come back to you as well, but we also do have Mahdi Shehu, who is the chairman, CEO of Dialogue Group Limited, joining us online as well. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. But before you go ahead, and could you respond to where there's some news items in circulation as to you being invited by the DSS? Is that right?
Yes, good morning. It is right. I was invited yesterday to go and meet the Kaduna State DSS director. For what reason, I don't know. I am readily available. I will go there. Whatever is the outcome, I will let everybody know full blown.
Wasn't the reason stated in the invitation?
There was no formal written invitation. It was just a telephone call invitation over the weekend. But I have told my lawyers, ahead of my going, they should go and get a formal written invitation and even confirm the telephone call being official one.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That means they'll be keeping tabs on you to see what transpires. All right, so talking about this...
I'll keep you updated.
Okay, so talking about this planned amendment of the Constitution, what's your impression? I mean, they've highlighted some of the key items, 13 key items or more, that they say, look, if these areas are amended, some of these, challenges, that concerns that different groups or different regions have will to a large extent be amended. What do you think of that?
Well, going down memory lane, I have seen another jamboree in the making. It is one amendment too many over the last many years. But let me quickly go for the jugular veins. If the amendment is going to make any sense, there are certain fundamental provisions of the Constitution that have outlived their usefulness and are no more meant for this generation. For example, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, dealing with fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, clearly spelled out why government is there in the first place: to protect lives, properties, honor, and dignity of the citizens. But there is no consequences. If lives are being lost by the minute, like in my own state, if properties are being destroyed by the minute, like in my own state, if honor is being destroyed or abused, like in my own state, there is no consequences for people who are managing people and their resources. In my own state, thousands have been killed, thousands have been displaced, properties destroyed in billions of naira. Yet you can't hold the governor for whatever it is. You can't hold a governor for ineptitude, inaction, and irresponsibleness. That part of the Constitution must be attached to a consequence of failure and docility. If you have a docile leader, a docile governor, or a docile president, under whose very eyes properties are being destroyed, lives are being lost, there must be a consequences attached to Chapter 2. Otherwise, Chapter 2 makes no sense. Number 2, let me say that part of the amendment should include creating a state police. Whatever may be the apprehension, whatever may be the fear of that police being used by the governor, it is still better to have a state police and also have state-owned intelligence gathering organizations. For example, you pick somebody from Akwa Ibom, or from Oyo, or from Edo, and you post him to Kaduna State, and you want him to do an intelligence gathering, and you want him to do a community policing. You are taking to an environment that is completely strange, completely unknown, with language barrier, with culture barrier, and everything. Before he settles and becomes part of that community, it may be time for his own retirement. That is the fundamental reason why we should have a state police and dismantle the state, the intelligence gathering organization, and have them by the state. There is no fault, there is nothing wrong with contributing to a central federal police, but let there be a state police owned by the state and funded by the state. Thirdly, I do not see a reason why a president would, by ritual, every year lay a budget before the National Assembly, a budget affecting every part of the country. This money being collected by the federal government from all forms of sources are money meant for the federating units. Therefore, the federating units must be able to prepare their own developmental budget as part of the input for the federal budget, such that everybody will present a development budget peculiar to its own requirements, to its own circumstances, and to its own demands and needs. Not just somebody at the federal government, at the Department of Budget, a minister for budget, deciding to do a road in my state when perhaps the road may not be my own requirement.
All right.
Or maybe digging borehole or whatever.
Okay, just hang on a moment. We'll come back to this as well. But let's not get on to Abuja. We've got Daniel Obwala, who is the SA to the Deputy President of the Senate on legal and constitutional matters. Good morning. Well, you may have heard a bird's eye view of what their thinking is concerning what they want about some of these amendments. So go ahead and tell us. These sections, those areas that are to be amended, is it 10 or 13 now? Now, having listened to them, will those concerns be addressed?
Well, thank you for having me. And we like this kind of engagement because even their expression of concerns regarding the amendment of the Constitution is a clear indication that the call is right, because they are expressing their concerns, which now can be pushed further when the conversation for the review starts. And then they will articulate those things that are of concern to them and how they want that implemented. I quite agree with most of what they said in the terms of the things we need to do and amend the Constitution. But for example, the creation of state police. I come from Borno State, and when the army and the law enforcement agents engaged the Boko Haram at the beginning of the insurgency, we didn't have so much of result until civilian JTF was created. And the civilian JTF became now the foundation for intelligence gathering. And sometimes they use them as front lines because they know the people and they are better able to give information relevant for the crushing of the insurgency. And the result is something, that everyone can see in the country, except for recent time that there's an increase in insurgency. And you can apply that in almost every part of the country where local intelligence is helping the law enforcement in curbing that. Now, this is what we welcome. Nigerians have to talk. Those in favor of state police will talk. Those against favor of police will talk. And then at the end of the day, we'll be able to articulate the wishes of the people. Democracy is about the wishes of the people. Democracy is not about shutting people up. You can imagine if the National Assembly go ahead to amend the Constitution without calling for memoranda, without calling for people to express themselves in terms of the way they want themselves to be governed. So that is right. Now, those who are calling for the boycott are not doing so in good faith, in my view, because some of them were participants in the 8th Assembly during the constitutional processes. For example, the spokesman for Arewa Consultation Forum, who was the chief of staff of the former Senate president, participated actively in the constitution review processes. And some of the amendments that were made in the 8th Assembly, which have now been passed to law, are successfully implemented. Whether you look at the electoral reform, you look at all other aspects. People who call for economic development as a substitute for constitutional review may be calling it out of context. Chapter 2 is elaborate about the fundamental objective and directive principles of state policy. Now it is left for the government to formulate policy consistent with Chapter 2 and give deliverables to the people of the country. There is no gathering of people that people will come together and say, we're amending the Constitution. The Constitution now provides everybody should be given 10,000 naira or 100,000. So economic policies are fashioned from the Constitution and sort of other extant laws in order to make deliverables important. Now, some of the items identified by the Senate as part of what they are looking at in the review of the Constitution are fundamental. If you give us time, I will give you elaborately the things we are looking to do. Even those who are calling for devolution of power, for instance, resource control, is still part of the conversation. Come to the table and talk. Give your reasons. And then let's see. But you see, this 9th Assembly is looking at how we can then begin to balkanize, bit by bit, the provisions of the Constitution that will make effective governance, even at state level, even when you refer to the quote-unquote, the concept of devolution of power. If you look at the items of the Constitution that are vested in the exclusive list, you begin then to tinker. Some of them you take out. Education you take out. Security you take out. You give it to the state. And then amendment of Section 308 of the Constitution now is key in checkmating the governor so that he does not use the machinery of the state in terms of security against the opponent or against those who oppose him. Now there is amendment proposal that Section 308 be qualified and 2 items from criminal liability will not avail the governor, the deputy, the president, or the vice president. One is where the president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor use the resources of his state, if it's in the case of the federal, for my financial misappropriation. That would take out immunity from him. 2, when he used the instrument of the state to oppress or to kill or use agents of the state to kill his opponent, then immunity will not avail him. When you take these 2 items out of immunity clause in Section 308, you will be able to checkmate the governor so that he wouldn't use the machinery of the state against the wishes of the people. Now, all over the world, there is a complaint that government thrives when younger generation of thinkers begin to take the reins.
Just one moment, Mr. Boala. I mean, there are so many issues that you have raised already, but I'd like to get the responses of our other panelists on this conversation. Mogaji and Dijimo, it's interesting that all of these issues are being raised now, but earlier you referenced the constitutions that came, some before independence, some after independence. But in all of those issues, in all of those references that you made, it's always about the Nigerian, especially the political class. Some of them are in government now, some of them have been in government, and it would seem like whenever anyone gets into government, some of those ideals that they fought for and they championed, they do not follow through when they get into government. And it's been responsible for some of the unrest that we've had in the political sphere over the years. If this happens, if we get the kind of the responses we are getting, we want from the political class, do you think we'll be calling from the kind of, making the kind of calls we are making now?
I think we are still making a very fundamental error in believing that something good can come out of nothing. I mean, you can't expect something to be built on nothing. It is ex nihilo, out of nothing, to expect this constitution to work. Now, the man from Abuja himself is stating all the areas that are wrong with the constitution. I can point out to 1,000. So are you going to be able to make 1,000 amendments? We have a defective document. It is not a document that is workable. It is the document that has led us into all of these insurgencies. It's the same document that has led us into all of this insecurity. It's the same document that is not allowing anyone to have a sense of belonging. What we need to do is to go back to doing the right thing. Constitutional conferences that are going to evolve into a workable document. You can't patch. You just cannot patch a bad tire that has suffered 101 punctures. This constitution is not workable. And I'll tell you something else. If we have to begin to look at the effort to be put into changing this constitution, and genuinely so, we will spend no less than 8 years, and we will still have to go around the states to get the approval as well, not just the National Assembly. So when are you going to be able to say you want to now say you have done a good job? Why not just sit down and say, let us have another effort to bring a better document, or perhaps just go back to the 1963 Constitution and spread it over 6 zones. Or perhaps go back to the 2014 Confab. We don't have the luxury of having to say you want to tinker with this document. One of the panelists mentioned something about the governors. The governors do not even have the powers to decide on what to do with security. And we call them the chief security officers. They don't even have the constitutional powers to be able to deploy anyone. They have to go through the commissioner of police. And they have nothing in terms of even community policing, so to say. I look at the Southwest effort that is seemingly looking like we may even have a kind of a regional effort, and they are saying it has to go through the Inspector General of Police. We have fundamental issues. We have fundamental issues with the bill that says that every land around every river now must go to government. The same National Assembly that is trying to tell us that they want to change the constitution is now even trying to pass an anti-federalism bill that takes land from the people, from the state, from the local government, and gives to the federal government. How can you, in one hand, be telling people that you want to amend the constitution, and at the same time passing laws that are totally against federalism? And who do you want to give these lands to? So
those issues will be, addressed. At least they will respond to them when we return, and then get a wider coverage when we return in just a moment. Don't go away. All right, then. Welcome back, Ayo.
Well, it will be interesting to find out how Adisho would like to react to what the man from the National Assembly has said. On the one hand, Mr. Adejumo is saying that we need a new constitution altogether, and the man in Abuja, Mr. Bola, is saying what we have we can still live with, especially if we're able to take on within those 10 or 13 items on the list for the Senate to amend. How do you react?
Well, my reaction is that first, I hope both congregations of the mosque, the church, synagogues, and other worship centers will continue to pray urgently so that when the amendment comes, members of the National Assembly will pity Nigerians, will have the courage to amend themselves out and become part-time legislators. In years of democracy, trillions of naira have been spent on these people, on their jumbo salary, on their allowances, on their luxury living, on their retreats, and all of their life and living of their families, on their automobiles, of their furniture, of their homes, at the expense of the common man. They have contributed substantially in pauperizing Nigerians and making Nigeria poorer every day.
Mr. Cho, when we speak like this, I mean, we're talking about all the, the common man, developmental issues. It would seem like we're just speaking over their heads. It would be nice to hear some specifics. For instance, and we'll come to a list of the thematic areas that the Constitution review is being focused on at the Senate. So specifically for you, what are those issues that are crucial? Are you saying that we should call for a brand new constitution, or you say that those reviews would suffice?
Dilute the center. The center is too powerful. The president of Nigeria has so much power that it takes only the grace of God not to produce a despot. A situation where the constitution gives the president the power to do everything, the power over everybody, is not healthy for Nigeria, is not healthy for Nigerians, and is not healthy for the future generations of Nigeria. Therefore, dilute the power, decentralize, strip the president of fundamentally 70% of the power he enjoys now, take it back to the regions, take it back to the state. So at least we can have a breathing space. But for now, the power arrogated to the president by the Constitution has asphyxiated all Nigerians. We are gasping for oxygen. Please amend that aspect.
Okay, just to be clear, you are calling for a review, an amendment, not a new constitution in its entirety, right?
We have more than enough a working document. Secondly, please, if we are not
I didn't quite get that. Pardon me, I didn't quite get that. Just so we can be sure on what side you're on. Are you calling for a review or a new constitution, or maybe something else?
I want an enhancement of the current provisions of the Constitution that are faulty, that are outdated.
It will be a review then. Well, let's take it to Mr. Bwala, because Mr. Bwala, you've listened to Mr. Dejimo say, well, if you see a tire that has been punctured 1,001 times, what's the point trying to patch it? He believes this is patching, and he doesn't exactly trust the National Assembly, seeing that statement that was put out. So in the context of what he says there are 1,001 issues, and he actually said he can name all of them. Do you think these 13 thematic areas which the Senate put out, do you think they can handle and address these 1,001 concerns?
Yes, they would definitely address those concerns. And sometimes it saddens my heart when I hear, with respect, eminent Nigerians saying things like they don't have confidence in the National Assembly. That means you don't have confidence in your vote. You see, the law recognizes the National Assembly as the legislative branch of the government. You cannot do without them. And then secondly, the issue of the confab, he made mention of the confab conference. So we are on the same page, because the confab conference report is part of what this review of the constitution process would seriously consider. And most of the concerns expressed by Mr. Boyega are in that confab conference document, which is now going to form part of what the present review process will engage in. So we welcome him to come and make articulation of the things he wants. Now, when you say it is like a tire that is punctured, there is nothing you can do about it. From 1960 till date, have we not made progress as a nation? Have we not survived as a nation? Have we not seen development in some areas as a nation? These are development based on the existing constitution and other extant laws of the land. You have every right to raise concern regarding, for example, the way you want to be governed. How else do you want to engage that conversation? Will you stay on the train and get it implemented? Whatever engagement that the Nigerian people come out with as a resolution, it will still have to come to the National Assembly for passage into law before it becomes a law. That is for people who understand constitutional process. There is no, and we have always said, you know, before the 2019 election, I think I said it in different fora. Look, if you don't have confidence in your lawmakers, go and change it. Go and change them and bring people that will go and articulate the same thing you're saying. In America, you revert back to your constituency and they tell you the concern. May I ask with the greatest respect, people who call against constitutional process, have they engaged with their local lawmakers? In most cases, if you ask, they have not. So how else do you want the nation to hear?
Let's do this. Mr. Bala, if you can hear me, you have put out a question.
Process.
You have put out a question. So let's get Mr. Dijimo to respond so we can have, you know, a well-rounded conversation. So he's asking, Mr. Dijimo, that have you, you know, spoken with your legislators? And, you know, the Senate is asking for memoranda in this 13 thematic areas. Is that something you are looking to, you know, voice your concerns regarding, saying, well, in this memoranda or in this thematic areas, we don't exactly think it will work. We need a new constitution altogether. Are you consulting with the National Assembly in any way?
The question asked is a very serious one. And I wish I had my colleagues here in the Afenifere and my colleagues in the Yoruba Summit Group. And that would simply have settled the matter. Yes, we did consult with our legislators, but I'm not going to be here telling you what those legislators themselves said. But I can tell you that they are not optimistic. They see it even as a waste of time. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but that is the truth and the gospel truth. I will not come on national television and tell you if that is not what we came back from discussing with even our people. See, we are in a country that things play out just the way some people have designed it to be. The 8th Assembly did what they had to do, but this 9th Assembly didn't continue from where the 8th Assembly stopped. And suddenly now there's agitation everywhere, and people are talking about self-determination, among other things. And people are raising all manners of questions and queries. And suddenly now they want to send us on the wild goose chase of having to bring memorandum. What memorandum do they want? If they have the 2014 confab report, why don't they go ahead and start implementing it? What do they need from us? I'm sorry, I have to finish this. What do they need from us in that respect? Let me quickly just say this about what I meant when I said this document is not workable. The 774 local government structure, for example. Since 1979, Lagos has had 20 local governments. Kano has been divided into Jigawa and Katsina. Between Kano, Jigawa, and Katsina, with the same population of Lagos, over 100 local governments with 100 members of the House of Reps, representing a state that was just as Lagos was, and Lagos still has 20 local governments. And you want to tell me that there's going to be a constitutional review that is going to take care of all of this in one fell swoop? We're not simply just going to be bamboozled with the kind of sweet talk coming from Abuja. We know the fundamental problems that are wrong with this constitution. Between 1946 and 1963, we had 4 constitutions in this country. We had the 54.
Okay, just hang on a minute. You know, we have other people as well. So let's get to Godi Wazirike. He's joined us now. He's a legal practitioner. He's also, I think, former president of Aki Kinga. He was at one of the confabs that was held where some of these issues were addressed. So could you tell us, what is your latest thinking now about this plan to amend the Constitution by the National Assembly?
Well, this plan to amend the Constitution right now, I would say it's on the right track, but there is a way to do it, and then it will have credibility. What do I mean by that? In 2014, we spent months getting the report for a constitutional amendment ready. And here is it. We worked hard, we worked day and night. Let me say without any fear of contradiction. The best branch in this country sat down and worked on it. And what did this government say? We're not interested. We don't even want to look at it. Now, 2.5 years or 2 years plus for the next election, we are being told there will be a constitutional amendment. They are even embarking on those rudimentary elements which would have been done long ago. So suddenly you now find a situation where we will now get stuck. If in the next 1 year and a half we don't have ready, then it's another effort. So in this country we will be serious. I don't believe that these people are serious about amendments. But whether it let us give them the benefit of doubt that they mean well. But whether there is need for constitutional amendment, yes, there is need, and it must be done urgently by men of goodwill. Whether they will now go about and want to amend, they will not do anything about the regulation of power. They will say, wait.
In that document, which you say was produced, I hope you can hear me. So does that suggest, or does it mean that as a result of the production of that document or coming up with that outcome, you're not asking for, as several people have said in their own words, a brand new constitution? If those amendments were incorporated, that will suffice?
Yes. In fact, we even have a draft copy of the constitution, part of the draft copy. And some people were apprehended, they were producing a copy. We said, no, it's a draft to the National Assembly, and it was sent to the National Assembly. So reinvent the wheel is of no use. As it is today, if all those things bother people in this country, emphasize them by a constitutional amendment, it has to be an amendment, because there is a constitution. Some people have argued they want a brand new constitution. Whether it is called brand new and then it's done, because they are doing what they are doing pursuant to the powers given to him by the present system. So the step in the right direction is what must be taken right now. And without any undue, without any fanfare, without any ceremony. They should embark on it right away.
Let's bring in Mr. Madishewu on this one. When you talk about state police, we also do know that there are huge considerations and impediments to some of those. Well, maybe not huge to some people. But in terms of that particular clause, we do remember that the last time out, that the last assembly tried something similar. It fell through. In fact, some of them believe, they have this impression that the Northern Bloc are not quite comfortable with it, and so they couldn't proceed with that. What do you think of that? Mr. Madishewu, we're trying to get you in. If you can hear us, or mute yourself and then go ahead.
I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, please. Yes, go ahead.
I said that the issue of state police being opposed by the North is in the past. Events in the last 10 years have convinced any reasonable Northerner that state police is the way to go in checkmating the issue of insecurity across the states. Let me also say that as part of the requirements for review of this constitution, it's either we do away with the local governments because it appears governors are not going to allow local governments to work, or we devise a way and means of making them independent in the real sense of the word. Because as it is now, they have been completely hijacked and taken over in operation and finances by the governors. In my own state, 34 local governments collected over 300 billion naira in 59 months, and there is no local government with a single 50 million naira developmental project that you could see beyond payment of salary of primary school teachers and local education authority teachers. Local governments must be seen to be accepted in the constitution, or if we don't want them, or we don't have the courage to insist that governors recognize them and leave them alone, we should remove them or remove the states, so that we have a federal government along with the 770 or 9 billion or 9,000 local governments, as the case may be, so that this interference, this hijacking of money and local government structure by the state governors will come to a stop. I also want to add that part of the powers of the president is to appoint ambassadors and diplomats. I call on our legislators, please look inward and ensure that we have international diaspora communities with Nigerians all over the world. When you're appointing diplomats, please look at the diaspora and appoint them from that community of diaspora to minimize cost and to ensure that those you are appointing are conversant with the job, more than this career and non-career diplomas that keep on gulping huge sum of money in the name of diplomacy.
Mr. Shehu, the first thing you said about the local governments gives me a little bit of concern. It will seem like we seem to pick and choose based on who is in power at any time to obey whatever aspect of the Constitution that we want to obey. For instance, the Constitution is very clear on the powers and the status of the local government administration, the third tier of government in Nigeria. But just as you are saying, a number of people would agree with you that it depends on which governor is on seat at any given point in time that will determine whether or not a particular local government system will work or not. What do we do about that one? Because the Constitution is very clear on that. So it's not a problem of Constitution now. It's a problem of us living by the tenets of it.
Well, the issue is you need a God-fearing governor, a sincere governor, an honest governor to look away from the funds of the local government. The attraction is the funds of the local government. Put together, local governments collect more money than the state on aggregate. Therefore, the attraction is for the governors to hijack that money. It is only the money they are after. Therefore, the solution is to devise a way and means of making it a criminal offense, punishable heavily for any governor who tampers with the finance of the local government under any guise. Like in my own state, the moment the federation accounts of the local government hits their own account, the state government under Ministry for Local Government will hijack the entire money and place it under the so-called joint account, which is an illegality. In that joint account, in 2017 alone, 2018 and 2019, there was a clear theft, misappropriation, misapplication of over 140 billion naira local government fund that cannot be explained by any responsible person, neither in projects nor in any economic activity that is measurable and seeable and measurable and verifiable by people.
Okay, well, so the thing about that is we don't have any of those documents before us, right now, so we can't address them specifically to raise those concerns and be able to clarify them. Perhaps when we do have them and get those parties, then we can focus on them. But let's bring in Mr. Boala on this one. Well, some of these issues that have been raised, I see electoral reforms as part of those. But when they're speaking about diaspora voting, it's not a new concept. I do remember the last INEC chairman, there was some conversation about this. So what is the consideration now about that specific clause before you respond to the other issues raised?
Of the Senate in his private capacity has sponsored a bill for diaspora voting that will permit Nigerians abroad to vote. And this is important because if, going by what the president recently said about influx of money from the Nigerians abroad, then they say where your money goes, your word must also follow. So they should be able to express themselves in terms of the people they are electing to govern, even though the people will govern the country in their absence, but whatever happens in the country also affects them because they are Nigerians abroad. So in his private capacity, he has sponsored that. Secondly, the deputy president of the Senate in his private capacity has also sponsored a bill in response to what Mahdi talked about local government, for complete autonomy of the local government from the state. The funds will go directly to the revenue of the state. The state will be able to have their own legislative branch in lawmaking on matters that falls within their purview. Now, these are worthy development. Coming back to what Mr. Godi said, you see, the CONFAP report is part of what the National Assembly is looking into. And it is a report that has come to be by virtue of articulation of eminent Nigerians throughout the Federation at the time. It's part of the process. Now, thirdly, with respect to what Mr. Boyega said, and I hope you give me time to explain that. When I feel sad that lawmakers, because it is, I can't quote him, I can't quote it since he didn't mention the lawmaker. But I know for a fact that the entire National Assembly are at Eden to the procedure for the amendment of the Constitution. And I guess that Nigerians should be able to look at this from this perspective. If as a country, we cannot have hope in calling our legislators to bear our mind in the National Assembly, then what hope do we have in saying that we are running a democracy? If your lawmaker, your representative, says, I cannot articulate what you talk about in the National Assembly because it is a shoddy thing or something that cannot work, there is in this constitutional process what is called power of recall. You recall him and send somebody that will be able to speak your mind. If he tells you that, I don't even want to talk about it, if he's confident, he will go to the media and say, I am in opposition to the amendment of the Constitution. Now, even at the state level, coming back to Mr. Mahdi, when you talk about your governor, muscling down the local government, there is a constitutional means of calling the governor to bear. It is called impeachment. If you have lawmakers in the state that were voted for to go and make laws in the state, they should be able to have the courage to tell the governor they can begin impeachment process. If they feel they cannot because the governor has control over them, then at that local government level, they should be able to exercise the power of recall provided for in the Constitution. When we begin to throw in the towel because we feel our lawmakers cannot speak our mind, then we want a democracy to come by what I call ambush, insurgency democracy approach. We have the constitutional means of lawmaking and reform of the country, which is the National Assembly and the State Assembly, is jettisoned. And then people go to the media. And let me even tell you this very seriously and passionately. I told that to my constituency, the Nigerian legal profession. Whenever there is a call for memoranda to come and speak, interest group come to speak, you will see people from civil society organization there. You will not see lawyers articulating their interests. The same thing, constitutional reform process cannot happen in the media. These eminent Nigerians, when they call for memoranda and they respectfully ask them to come and speak, you will not see nobody there. How else do you want to fashion a constitution that will be for the good of the people when you cannot speak? Now, Mr. Mahdi, with the greatest respect, I'd like the way you articulate things here.
Mr. Boala, just a moment.
But you should be able to come to the National Assembly and speak.
Okay, Mr. Boala, clearly you have given them an invitation. I'll be waiting to hear what they have to say about that. But Mr. Dejimo spoke about representation, local government formations. In fact, in the statement that was put out, he says that they don't think that the ethnic formation of the National Assembly can achieve this desired constitution that we're hoping to achieve. You recall the example he gave about Lagos and Kano. And I'm thinking, those 13 thematic areas which we keep referring to yet again, will they handle them?
Let me tell you, there is this thing called lobby. In lobby, if I need something and you need something, I will come to you and tell you, Mr. Akelu, I want you to support this agenda that I'm pushing in the National Assembly. I will in turn support that one. If I'm able to, and I know because the little time I've spent with guys in the National Assembly, I've been able to see that there is nothing like the North, South, West, and the rest. These guys are elite in their own right, and they push agenda for each other, irrespective of the feeling of regionalism or ethnic bias. And so we don't exercise this power of lobby. We do not. And so we think that because the Constitution of the National Assembly as it stands by means of representation might work against what we're thinking, we don't even make the singular effort of beginning a conversation towards the process. Now, in any case, if you have a doubt regarding the possibility of a reform of the Constitution, tell your lawmaker to go there and begin to speak so that the people from the constituency will hear that he is speaking. That, look, we don't agree to this fact. Until your lawmakers are in the National Assembly speaking, don't believe them. We are working together for the good of the country, and I believe in the lawmakers' decision.
We need to go to break right now, but we'll come back and get everyone's closing comments, starting with, just give us a moment. We'll be back. All right, gentlemen, we are winding down now, so let's see how tidy we can make this. Mr. Wazuruke, just go ahead and give us your concluding thoughts, because Mr. Boala says those concerns that you raised, that document, they are considering it as well. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy. In fact, that it's even an issue, because some of those who are with the National Conference are right now in the National Assembly. The former governor of Kebbi State was a very vocal member, and so were several other members. They have copies of this very report. So that for them, within 1 month, they can say, yes, we need. in zones on the basis of all tribes. Wherever you come from, nobody wanted to know. All you knew was, what do my people want? And let me say this without any of contradiction. The middle belt was the major beneficiary of that conference because we were able to solve almost all their problems, including the creation of states, including the quality of zones, including the reduction in the powers of the federal government and reduction in their allocation, both of them in favor of the states and the local government. We also said, let us abolish government
Okay.
the sector. Now, what will happen is if Lagos wants to have 1,000 kilometers, as long as they can afford it, they go ahead. Then it goes for Kano. Don't get a cover from the federal allocation. Those are some of the key issues. And now you want to go on a jamboree, on a junket and move around and ask, what do you think and what don't you think? Let's be serious in this country. We can amend the constitution with time and enough for this election. If in the year 2022 say of amendment, it may not fly.
All right, let's bring in, pardon me for that. Let's bring in Mr. Adejima on this. Your closing thoughts in 30 seconds, we'll be happy with that.
Thank you. I'd like to answer a question and pose another to Mr. Boala. Mr. Boala said we've been having some kind of growth and development in this country. And my question to him is this: can we compare the level of growth from 1951 to 1959, or perhaps 1966 in Nigeria, with the kind of growth that we have had thereafter? We had a series of firsts in Africa in the whole of the West. In those periods, we had the best of universities and consulates abroad and educational as well as agricultural establishments that can rival with anyone in the world. And we were doing as well as some countries of the Asian continent. We had real growth in those days when we had a structure that was working. What we are having now is not working. The structure is bad. What the structure has produced are transactional politicians who would perhaps not even be the kind of politicians that you want to say will represent the true interests of the people. Everything has become monetized. The structure is simply wrong.
All right, then let's bring in Mr. Shehu. Give us your concluding thoughts as well.
On legal matters, proffered an impeachment as a solution to the hijacking of local government structure and finance by the governors. That may work somewhere. For instance, again, in my own state, all the state legislators are government contractors. Therefore, there is no way a contractor will impeach his own principal. They are currently not only dozing, but they are sleeping and have gone into deep slumber in the face of monumental stealing of public fund. If such are the legislators, God save the electorates, God save Nigeria, and God save democracy.
Okay. Well, Mr. Boala, to your concluding thoughts and your response to Mr. Adejumo's poser, answer this. You heard what Mr. Madi Shehu said the other time about the constitution and how that some government cherry pick which of the aspects, which of the provisions to comply with. Is this provision, is this constitutional review in any way factoring in the necessity to compel compliance with the constitution by the governors, especially with the example, of course, of the local government administration that we've been talking about?
That's the point. The point raised by Mr. Ahmed is a valid one. So Mr. Ahmed can then come forward and then give us a proposal of what he thinks should be done in order to take care of the concerns he has raised. I'll be happy, even privately, to engage with him and see how we can formulate a bill in that regard. That's the whole idea of constitutional process. It's not because you are concerned or you are afraid or you feel disappointed, then you stay away. The more you stay away, the more the government is run contrary to your expectation. Democracy is about articulation. Back to Mr. Boyega. The answer is simple to his question in terms of development during the time of federalism and now. then corruption was not institutionalized. You see, today a lot of people call on the president to do what their governor ought to do, and they have failed to call the governor. I have not had any conversation across Nigeria where people are talking about their governors. Every conversation is about the president. And if you look at the constitution, there is a greater part of governance that is given to the governor. So we just lose hope in their ability to checkmate the governor. In the same way, we lose hope in our ability to checkmate the president. If the president does what is wrong, impeach him. If the governor does what is wrong, impeach him. Nigeria is a nation of process. It's not limited to one man, one term, or two terms. That's the whole idea. Now, and I agree with Boyega. Even
Mr.
during those times, the north where I come from, it produces. Okay.
I just want to jump in and say, look, there are those who think that when you talk about them impeaching this or recalling this, they say, look, you live in this country, you know the process. You've seen what happened, how they try to recall some people. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for you to achieve any of those in this country.
So the answer is just simple. You see, I'll be happy to help. But the idea is that you then bring a proposal to the National Assembly, like an amendment to the Constitution that will say, where the governor takes any action to impeach a lawmaker on the account of a conversation for his impeachment, that will take away liability from the government. You can criminalize that. You can also take away the powers of the governor from taking steps to deal with anybody who raises question of impeachment. It can come by way of alteration to the Constitution. Once it becomes a law in the Constitution, the governor stays away from it, because attempting to do that will mean that he will lose his seat. Listen to me, and Nigerians listen with the greatest respect. There is nothing that cannot be done through constitutional process. Nothing at all. Including that conversation they are talking to determine whether or not we want to exist. It is when father and mother, girlfriend and boyfriend, business partner and business partner sit down and talk before they fashion out a way. The minute you lose confidence in the other party because you think it has happened in the past, nothing has happened. We have discussed in the past, nothing has happened, therefore we can't talk. And in closing, my brother, let me tell you, when the president won the election, immediately they throw the confab report to him to implement it. When the man who instituted the confab conference himself, President Jonathan, did not bring that to law. And this is a president who just came new. He needs to sit down and study. Now the president is in agreement to look into the confab report and bring out salient part of what is important in putting together a country so we can move forward.
Nice place to let it go. Gentlemen, we thank you all. Mr. Daniel Bola, essay to the Deputy President of the Senate on legal and constitutional matters. Mr. Boyega Adejumo, Publicity Secretary of Yoruba Summit Group, as well as Mr. Madi Shehu, rights activist, and he's also the CEO of Dialogue Group Limited. Mr. Godi Owazirike, a legal practitioner, member of the 2014 Confab, and the former president of Akai Kenga. Gentlemen, thank you all for talking to us today. We will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Measures are crucial in the fight against COVID-19. Maintain 2 meters distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Cover your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then dispose of the used tissue immediately. Do not touch your nose, mouth, or eyes. Remember, avoid physical contact with people. Simply greet with a wave, a nod, or a bow.
Nigeria currently ranks at number 93 out of 117 in the World Global Food Index. A disappointing score for a largely agrarian society. Agriculture alone accounts for over 40% of the employment in Nigeria. It's a sector in dire need of government support, considering it used to account for more than 70% of the country's GDP at independence. Now it contributes just over 20%. The Buhari administration in March of 2018 set up the National Food Security Council, specifically to ensure food security in the country. The president believes the council is delivering on its mandate.
In the last 5 years, we have recorded notable achievements despite the decline in GDP by 6.1% in second quarter of 2020. As a direct result of coronavirus, the agricultural sector continued to grow because of government's targeted agricultural policies. We have been blessed by God with 6 successive rainy seasons, ensuring good harvest since 2015. The nation thanks our farmers for rising to the occasion and answering our national call.
The council is also taking credit for the reduction in the cost of food over the months and wants Nigerians to expect high output this harvest season. Its deputy chairman, the governor of Kebbi State, Atiku Bagudu, says the country has achieved self-sufficiency in many crops.
Harvest has commenced in some parts of the country in respect of some crops, and because of that, the prices have begun to respond to harvest by beginning to come down. Maize was never on the importation ban list. What CBN did in order to support domestic maize production was to restrict the sale of foreign exchange for maize importation, and but maize is not a banned.
All right, so we've got Mr. Gideon Negedu, who is the Secretary, Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria, joining us from Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Well, much as there are mixed reactions concerning that decision by the executive, but I think I was reading where the president of your association was thumbing it up, saying, way to go. So what is the latest thinking about that now?
Yeah, morning, Chamberlain. The sentiment is still the same. The Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria is still very much appreciative to the president for his move to support the industry. It has been a smooth sail for us in the industry. We started with about 8 blending plants in 2016. Today we are at about 35 blending plants in the country, and these are all private sector investments. Nigeria is self-sufficient as far as NPK production is concerned. NPK is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium-based fertilizers. These are the basal or main fertilizers applied in cereal production in Nigeria. So, to that extent, we want to continue to commend the government for its strides in supporting the industry. One of the key areas that we have, as an association, targeted and continue to target is to produce fertilizers that are tailor-made or customized for Nigerian soils, what we call the area and crop-specific fertilizers. That we're able to do effectively today. Today, a farmer can go and test his soil, bring the results of that test to any fertilizer plant that is close by him, and he's able to get a specific fertilizer for his crops.
Okay, so, you know, as much as you're working on some of those
before 2016.
Right, as much as they're working on some of those innovative measures, which are commendable, one wonders, for the farmers, of course, people that need these fertilizers, just how easy is it to get them? Because there are reports that some of them actually find it hard to purchase fertilizers. And the cost also. What is the cost of a bag?
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the access to fertilizer, it's pretty much simple. It's really the private sector driving this. Government is not actively involved in the distribution of fertilizers. You know, when we started this program, like I said, we had only 8 fertilizer plants. And bear in mind, these plants are private sector investments. They are not government investments. Now, what we have been able to do was to bring these production plants closer. We encourage our members in their investment to put fertilizer plants closer to the farmer. Well, what we do in the presidential initiative is what we call blending. We blend and mix straight fertilizers. So the idea is to make it closer as possible to the farmer. We're advancing closer and closer to the farmer. In the Northwest, we have sufficiently covered. In the Northeast, we are making progress there. In the Southwest and in the South-South, we are making progress there as well. So access is not and should not be a problem. What we are working very closely and tightly on now is to ensure that there is effective distribution to the last mile. With respect to your question on what the cost of fertilizer is, Mr. President was gracious enough for the presidential initiative to allocate 5,000 naira per bag as the cost of fertilizers, NPK fertilizers. And this is NPK 2010-10. But bear in mind, there are other variants or other blends of fertilizers that the farmers use. In fact, for your information, we have about 30 blends that can be used. These are produced by the same production plants. What we get under the presidential initiative is grossly discounted. You're aware of the Morocco agreement between Nigeria and Morocco, where we are getting discounted phosphates. The same with potash from Russia and urea here in Nigeria. The same private sector blender cannot get those raw materials at the same cost. So as a result, other blends apart from the 2010-10 blend, all right, my farmers understand what I'm saying, will not get it at the same price. So you will see variance in prices. But with respect to the presidential fertilizer program, anytime you see a fertilizer bag with the coat of arms at the back and the FEPSAN logo, that sells for 5,000 naira. It's not supposed to sell more than that. Mr. President was gracious enough to ensure that this is sold at this price.
How about the ones that are from the other, that are not from Mr. President, the ones that you say are private sector initiative? How much do those ones go for, very quickly?
Blend. Go as high as 7,000, 8,000, 10,000.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So 7,000, 8,000, 10,000, some of them 15,000?
It depends. Okay. It depends.
Okay. Because that is one consideration that some people might prefer to have imported ones, hoping it will be cheaper. Another reason that might be adduced would be how much, how do we have enough? What is our consumption capacity compared to our production capacity? Well, we'll take you on that when we come back from this break. Yeah, so Mr. Negedu, 2 issues there. One of them is the costs that you have talked about. Some even say that that cost goes as high as 19,000 naira. Is there any mechanism to ensure that, you know, it sells for a very good price? Because some would even say that the one that is sold by the presidential, you know, fertilizer initiative for 5,000, some of your people could get them, rebag them, and then sell them at exorbitant prices. Plus, what is our consumption price compared to our production capacity in Nigeria of fertilizer?
Okay, thank you very much. I am part of the Fertilizer Technical Working Group, which consists of all major players in the private sector and in the public sector. And we've been validating fertilizer statistics now for the last 10 years. I can tell you accurately for NPK fertilizers, year-on-year consumption, the highest we've done is about 900,000 tons of NPK. 900,000 tons of NPK. Today we have an installed capacity of about 5.5 million tons in Nigeria. With respect to prices, I can speak clearly for the initiative, the fertilizer initiative. It is not to be sold more than 5,000 naira. Anywhere else where these things are sold, we get reports and we immediately try to get those issues remedied. With respect to what people sell or the other types of blend that they sell, I think I've made it very clear. They would sell at their own cost. There is no control on those prices. Now,
perhaps
like I told you,
then,
we're working with agro dealers,
well,
or what you call
Mr. Adegodu, perhaps that is where the problem is. If there is no monitoring or anything checking, the increase of the prices, perhaps that is where your working group has to also go. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're not able to take this further. We'll have to thank you. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue the conversation some other time. Gideon Adegodu is the secretary of the Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you're not a farmer, so you can't know these things very well. All right, let's take a look at your feedback. Tezungo Dugeri says, I want Mr. Boala to understand that the bulk of the people who make up the National Assembly were imposed or selected, so do not see themselves as accountable to the Nigerian people. We can only have efficient democracy when our votes count. Okay, in that case, elect. Okay, well, that's Tezungwe Dugeri's comment.
Absolutely. Well, Nelson Ekujumi says, no society has made progress by refusal to dialogue. Those who are calling for a boycott or against any dialogue to move the country forward are demeaning our civility as a people, and we only hope they will allow reason to prevail and do the needful, he says.
Well, Felix Akpan, to say the Constitution gives too much power to the president is unfounded because the National Assembly can veto the president. Our problem is the legislature is unable to use its powers for the benefit of its citizenry. They think too much of themselves.
Badon Joshua says, I concur with the issues raised by Mr. Madi Shehu on CA. However, the will to urgently attend to these needs is absent. If I may ask, what happened to the confab report that so much of our resources was used in setting it up? Until date, silence has been the answer. I thought I heard Mr. Bola say they're looking at that as well. So I hope it's the same thing you're talking about. Okay. All right. So there you go. That is the show today. Wow. We hope that you keep those views coming. And whatever. I mean, these are issues sufficient for us to go ahead and look at for the rest of the week. But we will see you again here tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kairi Okikiolu.
Please do stay safe. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.